I got a bill from my manufacturer that's an extra $12,000 more than it's supposed to be. And they're holding my inventory hostage until I pay this bill. On top of that, they told me they're no longer gonna be working with me. And this is after I spent over $20,000 in startup fees. And all this happened just 2 days after I sold my business. So getting this sorted out is extra important to me, not just because I still own 25% of Performance Nut Butter, but also because I don't want my new partner to be pissed off. And I'm gonna explain what happened, how to make sure that you don't get scammed by your manufacturer, and how I'm trying to work to resolve this. And at the end of this video, I'm gonna explain how this huge disaster ended up leading into the biggest business lesson I've learned in my entire life. So please stay around till the end, because this is something I wish I would have known a lot earlier in my entrepreneur career. First off, this is rare. A lot of people are worried about getting scammed by their manufacturer, and I'm here to tell you it almost never happens. People are worried that they're gonna send a wire and never receive their inventory. But what happened to me is kind of a weird story, and a good scam is a lot more subtle than just taking your money and running away. Let's start at the beginning. About 3 years ago, I started this company, and it was really hard to find a manufacturer. But when I finally did, he was a pretty good deal, and I had some issues with my manufacturer. But at a certain point, he decided to raise my per unit manufacturing fee from 10 cents per pouch to 50 cents per pouch, which would make my cost go from $1 per unit to $5 per unit. And that price doesn't include my ingredients like the nuts, the salt, it doesn't include the display boxes, it doesn't include the film, it doesn't include a lot of the stuff that goes into making a product. It's just their fee for grinding up the nut butter and putting it into a pouch. And I had already been having problems with this manufacturer, my first manufacturer for this product. I would send them enough ingredients to make 5,000 boxes, and they would only make 4,000 boxes, meaning that a lot of my nuts and all that kind of stuff were just wasted. They also would send me leaky pouches, and they weren't even taking the pouches and putting them into the 10-pack display boxes. I had to hire people to do that manually. There was also really long lead times, and overall, they just weren't that professional. It was kind of a disaster working with them. So when they told me that they're gonna raise the price to $5 a box, that was the last straw. I decided to go find a more professional manufacturer. And it was really hard to find a manufacturer because my product is so unique. To find someone that could grind up the nut butters and has the pouching machine to be able to put them in the pouches, it took a lot of work. But I was able to find 2 different manufacturers. One was close by, which was driving distance from where I live here in Santa Monica. The other one was in Colorado, which is a little bit inconvenient because I would have to fly to them anytime I wanted to go visit them. So I first drove to the manufacturer that was here in California, and the big pro about them was they're close by. But that was probably the only really big pro about them. In meeting with them, I'd have to do the purchasing for all the nuts, all the salt, all the different display boxes, everything like that. Their machine also made a different size pouch than my pouch, which would be kind of a big pain in the butt because I'd have to change all my design, my boxes, and honestly, I didn't like the new shape that they had. It was a lot more boxy, a lot more square, and it didn't look as streamlined as my design. They're also a little bit more expensive than I thought they should be at 25 cents per pouch or $2.50 per box. So I decided to fly to Colorado to meet with the other manufacturer, which was a little bit inconvenient because I had to pay for a flight and I had to pay for a hotel. But in meeting with them, there was a lot of pros with going with this manufacturer. For starters, they were cheaper than the other guys. They told me it would cost about 14 to 18 cents per pouch or $1.40 to $1.80 per box. Now, one big caveat that's going to be very, very important later is they told me that my price depended on how long it takes for their machine to run my product. And my manufacturer said it should take between 2 to 3 days. And that's how they came up with the 14 to 18 cents. Again, this will be important later. They also told me for the pros that they would be handling everything. They'd be buying all the nuts, they'd be buying all the boxes, that basically it was somewhat of a turnkey operation. Now, I did have to pay $400 a month as a maintenance fee for that. Now, to pay for that service, it would be an extra $400 a month on any month that I do a production run, and $200 a month for any month I'm not doing a production run or when I'm quote unquote idle. Now, this feature is very important to me because I hate dealing with production. I love marketing, I love making content, but dealing with supply chain is the thing about business I absolutely hate the most. I just want to be able to sell as fast as I can sell and know that the inventory is going to be there and know that I'm not going to ever run out of inventory. So the fact that they were going to do this was a huge bonus for me. Now, another con with them is I had to pay for storage. Basically, they said it would cost between $30 to $70 per month for every pallet that I have stored at their warehouse. This will also be very important later. They also told me that they could do my size pouch on their machine, but that I'd have to pay for a special die cut that would be about $1,000. Overall, they seemed professional, and they told me that if their machine messed up, that they would pay for any kind of mess up situation. So at this point, my decision was pretty obvious, but there was a catch. To start working with this company in Colorado, there was a $4,000 startup fee. And on top of this, they sent me a long, ridiculous legal document that I had to sign, and I had to hire a lawyer to look over the document, which was another $200. Now, something in my heart was unsure about this manufacturer in Colorado, but the pros outweighed the cons by a long shot. And one other thing I forgot to mention about the Colorado manufacturer was in signing the document, I committed to doing a production run every other month, basically making 5,000 units every other month. And this was a little scary because at the time I was only selling about 1,500 units a month. So basically I'd only need to do a production run every 3 to 4 months. But I knew I was going to be coming out with a new flavor, and I knew I wanted to start ramping up sales. So I wasn't super worried about that. I knew that if I put more of my time and energy into this business, I could start growing the sales. Now is where things start to get interesting. So do me a huge favor, smash that like button, because I'm about to start sharing some real behind the scenes things, some things that have been really painful for me to deal with. So I decided to take the plunge, sign the contract, and right away there was $4,000 in what they called roosting fees or startup fees. On top of that, which they didn't fully explain, there was another $675 to do R&D fees and another $675 in a production test run and another $400 for a sourcing fee. And this really didn't make sense to me because I was basically doing all the sourcing. I was telling them who all my different suppliers were for the nuts, but they said, oh, I got to pay them the $400 for them to verify the suppliers. And that doesn't make sense because why am I paying $4,000 for startup fees if I'm going to have to pay another $400 for sourcing fees? Shouldn't that be covered in the $4,000? Then on top of that, I had to pay another $1,300 to get that die cut so they could make my size pouch, which was more than the $1,000 they said, and they tacked on a receiving fee. Basically a fee for them to receive the package to their warehouse, which is kind of just ridiculous at this point. Okay, so this has been way more expensive to start than I thought it was going to be, but it's going to be worth it in the end to work with a more professional manufacturer, right? So I flew out again to Colorado and we did a production test run, or maybe it was an R&D trial, I'm not really sure. Basically they had their machine and they took my nuts, they took my ingredients, measured it all out, put it through the machine, one after another. It probably took them 30 minutes to an hour to do all the different samples for my product. And the truth is, the taste of this product from this new manufacturer just wasn't as good as it was from the old manufacturer. And to this day, I still don't really know why. I spent hundreds of hours trying to figure it out. Eventually, my old manufacturer said that they had a special machine that enhanced the flavor. I tried a ton of different combinations and ended up having to pay them for another round of testing. At the same time, I was doing testing for the new cacao flavor, and I would take the samples that I'd made with the manufacturer and send them out to people in my product launch group. I ended up deciding between either 20% cacao or 25% cacao, and I asked them, instead of making 5 pounds of each, could you just make 10 pounds of each? Because all they had to do was measure out the nuts and put it through the machine. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. And the owner of the company in Colorado said, yeah, sure, no problem, no big deal at all. But then 2 days later, as I was driving up to go on vacation to Northern California, I was going to a weekend concert, I got an email on the drive up where basically he said, yeah, instead of it being $675 for that, it's actually gonna be over $1,300. And that completely annoyed me so much because he had given me his word that it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but he decided, you know what, nah, I'm gonna make it double the price, which was very, very frustrating. I ended up spending that entire weekend pissed off because I felt like there had already been so many issues. I already felt like he'd been stealing so much money from me. Now on top of this, he's gonna rob me out of another $675. But ultimately, I ended up just paying it because honestly, it wasn't worth the sleepless nights and all the anger. But during this time, months had passed and I would actually stay up late at night just full of fear, full of anger, and I was waiting for them to start charging me that maintenance fee and that storage fee because I did have at least 1 or 2 pallets worth of ingredients at their facility. But in all honesty, it wasn't my fault that things were taking so long. I would send them an email and sometimes I wouldn't get an email back for 5, 6, 7 days plus. And that was a very frustrating experience. And at this point, I had already spent over $10,000, which was a lot more than I thought it would cost in startup fees. But I really believe that once we got past the startup phase, and once things were starting to flow, it would be easy, it would be automated, they'd be taking care of everything. Now please keep paying attention because things are about to get a lot worse. I had signed the contract in March of 2019. It's now around October of 2019, and for some good news, I had finally decided on the recipe. I was between 20% or 25% cacao. I decided just to split the difference, 22.5%. And basically I told my manufacturer, I'm done with testing. Let's just do between 20 and 25%. And he said, okay, great. You got to pay another $225 for R&D, which was ridiculous because I had already spent money on R&D. We did the 20% and the 25%. I'm like, dude, just combine the two. It's the same thing. And he said, no. We need to do a special R&D process. And he ended up making the 22.5% cacao in a blender at his facility. And he sent me some junk product that had chunks in it and was not at all representative of my product. Oh, and on top of the $225, he also charged me a fee to send me the product. I'm beginning to suspect he's just looking for excuses to make more money off me. Then it finally started happening, the thing I had been afraid of. He started charging me for storage and maintenance fees. And at first it was just $194 for storage fees. And then a month goes by and there wasn't another charge. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe it was just a mistake, because at this point, we still haven't even done a full production run. I'm just sitting around waiting for him. I'd send him an email and wouldn't hear back for a week or more at times. So another month goes by and then boom, I get charged for the last few months worth of maintenance and storage fees, $740. But at this point, I'm so close to the launch for P&B Cacao, I can't stop now, but I was pissed off. I don't get angry very easily, but this entire thing had made me extremely angry. And I got on a call with him and I was very nice about it, but at the same time, very stern and very, very upset. And he ended up giving me an $800 credit, which was a nice gesture on his part. But at this point, he'd been making a lot of money off me. But for that month, I still had to pay $100 in fees. So basically, it was a $900 bill, and he's like, oh, I'll knock off $800 from it. And this bill was all from storage and idle maintenance fees. Now at this point, we're finally ready to do a production run. Things are about to get a lot more exciting, and boom, over $7,000 for a production test run. And I think I only got a few thousand pouches. It wasn't even a full production run. I had to pay him around $8,000 for that. So if you break it down per box, it was way more than he had quoted on it being, but whatever, it's just a test run, not a big deal. And then another month goes by and another month goes by. And at this point, I had ordered a full production run from them of about 3,000 units of original P&B and about 2,000 units of the cacao P&B. And a few months go by and it's kind of radio silence from them, but at least I'm not getting charged the monthly maintenance and storage fees, so I'm not extremely worried, because around this time, my sales have been slowing down. So I wasn't in desperate need of this production run. But then boom, got hit with another $1,000 fee, which was all the backdated maintenance fees and storage fees. And at this point, it's around October, and I still haven't heard about the production run that I ordered back in, I think it was May or June. And I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed, a little bit worried, but truth is, around this time, I'm starting to get a little bit sick of my Amazon business, because honestly, every time I check my email, it seems like there's another fee coming from my manufacturer, and my sales are slowing on Amazon. And at the same time, this YouTube channel and my course are taking off. And I'm having a lot more fun making YouTube videos. I'm having a lot more fun dealing with the students in my course. So dealing with my Amazon FBA business just stopped being as much fun. And it was kind of terrifying, because 1 out of 5 times I would check my email, there'd be a random bill for another few $100s that I owe my manufacturer. And I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. So it was around this time I decided to start looking for someone to buy my company. And I talk about in this video right here how I sold my Amazon FBA company. But here's the moment that we've all been waiting for. 2 days after I sold my Amazon FBA company, I checked my email, which is something, to be honest with you, I had stopped doing. I was terrified to check my email because I was so sick of getting bills from my manufacturer, and my worst fear came true. I checked my email against my better judgment on a Saturday. I almost never check my email on the weekend because I don't want to ruin my weekend. And so on this Saturday, I checked my email and I got a bill for $23,000 from my manufacturer, when they originally told me that the most that a production run would cost would be around $9,000. So why was the bill so much? Well, remember back at the beginning of this video when I told you that my manufacturer said it depends on how many days it takes their machines to run my product. And they said it would probably take 2 to 3 days to run my product on their machines. Well, he ended up telling me it took 13 days to run my product. And he told me, well, our machines were acting up and that's the deal in the contract, so we got to pass on the expense to you. And so he came up with this idea of it costing 50 cents a unit, despite the fact that he told me it would cost around 14 to 18 cents a unit. So he sent me a bill for basically triple what he told me it would cost. And this is after I spent around $20,000 in startup fees. And I spent that weekend being the most angry I had been in probably the last 10 years of my life. And this is one of the reasons you should never check your email on the weekend, because there wasn't really anything I could do about it. I tried calling him, I tried texting him, and not surprisingly, he didn't respond to any of my messages. Now, at this point, do me a favor and leave in the comments down below what you would do. And don't worry, I'm gonna talk about how I resolve this and how you can avoid getting scammed by your manufacturer. Now, I will say that this whole issue has probably led to the biggest lesson I've learned in my entire life. So please keep watching. I wanna share with you this really big lesson, but first let me explain how I resolved this issue. So come Monday, I ended up calling, I ended up emailing, and I was extremely angry, but I have an account manager with this manufacturer. So I wanted to go through them first, see if they could resolve it, see if it was a mistake. Because keep in mind, this was so ridiculous to me. I'm like, they may have just made a mistake. I don't know how they came up with this idea of, oh, it costs 50 cents a unit. So I was really upset, but I didn't want to get angry first because maybe it's just a silly mistake. So I talked to my account manager back and forth. And at first she's like, oh, let me look into that. And then a few days later, she said, oh, it wasn't a mistake. In fact, we gave you a discount because they said it took 13 days on their machines, that we actually lowered the price because we didn't want to charge a ridiculous amount. So we lowered it to 50 cents. So I got on the phone with her and I was extremely upset. And now here's something very important. I think when you're upset at a situation, make sure you express that to the person you're talking about. I told her from the beginning, look, I'm extremely pissed off. I'm not pissed off at you. I'm pissed off at, well, probably your boss and this whole issue, because it wasn't really her fault. She's kind of a low-level employee. She's not the owner of the company. But I sat and I vented to her for 30 minutes and I explained, look, this has been a terrible experience working with you guys. I've spent over $20,000 in startup fees. And oh, by the way, in this email that the owner sent me, he also said, by the way, our machine's not really that good. We're gonna sell the machine. We're no longer gonna work with you anymore, which means the 20 grand in startup fees that I paid have been completely flushed down the toilet. So after a lot of back and forth, they basically said to me, 50 cents is a pretty common rate. It's the going rate. Like, it's not like we're trying to rip you off. And I told them that's complete BS. I emailed a few different other manufacturers. I found one that said that they would do it for 25 cents. I showed that to them. And they ended up eventually just saying, you know what, we're only gonna charge you 25 cents, which was still a lot more than the 14 to 18 cents that they quoted me when I first talked with them, when I first decided to make the deal. But when you look at all the money I spent in startup fees, in production costs, all that kind of different stuff with this company, and you look at how many units I actually made with them, my effective rate per pouch was about 56 cents per unit. So they still scammed me out of a ton of money. Now, to be fair, I don't think that they were actively trying to scam me. I think that their machine did have issues. I think that their system, their setup, wasn't made for someone like me. I think it's very important in life to realize that a lot of times when people screw you over, it's not malice. They aren't doing it because they're bad people. It's a lot of times just incompetence. And I'll get into the biggest lesson I learned in just a minute, but here's something really important. Despite the fact that they royally ripped me off, they charged me way more in manufacturing. When you look at the cost of my product, when you include all the nuts, all the ingredients, the display boxes, the master cases, the manufacturing fee, the Amazon FBA fee, the Amazon FBA pick and pack fee, and all the other fees associated with my product, despite the fact that they way overcharged me, my product was still profitable. And this is a really important wake-up call. If you're gonna be selling a product on Amazon or just a product in general, make sure that you're selling a premium product that has a big profit margin, because things happen in business. Mistakes are made. You're gonna have manufacturers that overcharge you. You're gonna have things, random costs that come up. And if you're working on razor thin margins, when those issues come up, you're not gonna be profitable anymore. And despite all the sleepless nights I had, all the fear that was building up in me in this year or two in working with this manufacturer, at the end of the day, even though the worst case scenario came true, my product was still profitable. And this leads into the big lesson that I learned. And this is probably, again, one of the most important lessons I've learned in my life. So my worst fear, my nightmare came true. I had a manufacturer that was terrible. And at the same time, my Amazon FBA sales were dropping. This was absolutely the worst thing that, in my opinion, could have happened in my Amazon business. Now, here's the important part. Because of all these bad experiences I had with the manufacturer, because all these bad things that happened, it led to me deciding to sell my Amazon FBA business. And again, I ended up selling about 75% of it. And I got an absolutely amazing deal. I'm extremely excited in working with this new partner. I sold it to an 8-figure Amazon FBA seller whose plan is for us to grow it together and sell it for $1 to $2 million. And here is the really interesting thing. After selling 75% of my business, he agreed he's gonna fund everything. He's gonna do all the work. I basically can just make some high-level decisions and we can kind of grow this thing, and I'm not gonna have to put a lot of energy into it. And I feel the most free I've felt in my entire life. I spent yesterday, a weekday, just surfing, enjoying the day, going to the beach. I'm spending today just filming a YouTube video, something I love doing. And it's because my worst case scenario came true. It allowed me to let go of something that was no longer serving me. And this is the big lesson I've learned, that in life, sometimes the thing that you think is the worst thing that could happen to you is what leads to what's gonna be the best thing that happens to you. And I talk about in depth in this video right here, how I sold my business, how much I got for my business, and why it's such a great deal. So click on that video, I'll see you in the next video, and remember to enjoy the journey, because that thing that's happening to you that you think is terrible, the worst case scenario, might end up leading to the best thing that could possibly happen to you.